robot cars, and what was the other subject? Well, it was all the robot cars. Perhaps I should call this Robot Car Doomsday. But, you know, if this video is good, then it'll either be kicked off YouTube or I'll be assassinated. Good point. Robot Car Doomsday. I just made some comments on this guy's video. He's this guy who worked, a smart but naive, young, naive, everyone's naive. He's a young, naive guy, 25, 30 years old. I don't know what he is. He's very smart, hard worker, focused, got a lot of good qualities to him. He's trying to take care of his family and stuff in this plummeting economy, idiot world. So it's not easy for a lot of people getting a job. I don't know. I think he should just get a bartender job. Then he'd be surrounded by idiots. Drunk people. Maybe that's a bad idea. But anyway, he did the DoorDash thing. He didn't get hired, even though he's smart. That's probably why he didn't get hired anywhere. A little bit overqualified. And so he grabbed the DoorDash job. And he's very thrifty. He's very computer smart and creative and stuff. He's got in a lot of ways, he's much smarter than average. So he overlapped the different DoorDash, the different gig apps, 3 of them, and he took the half-decent calls from each one, which is like 1 out of 10, by the way. But he orchestrated them in a way that he wouldn't get caught in, so he could line them up and not get complained about with other people, customers watching him drive, where he's going, where's he going with my order and stuff. And he did it smart, and he lined up the good orders in all 3 apps. And he did it during the pandemic scare, which at that time I recall it was paying 3 or 4 times as much. Then he was making 2 or 3 times as much, that 3 or 4 times as much. And he was making $300 or $400 a day, and he did it for like several months straight, or very much in the 5th month, I believe. He made about 5 times what most dashers make on average. And he's thinking it's that great, but he doesn't realize it was paying 3 or 4 times as much. He doesn't realize what he would have learned had he been a dasher or a cab driver for many years, is that if you drive too much and you work too hard, it brings you bad luck. Either a car accident or this or that, or you get sick or anything. You could get crabby. Your wife could hate you for being crabby. You could get into a fight with someone. The hard work to that extent is bad luck. To the exact extent that it's good luck, hard work is bad luck. Seems like good luck because it's paying the bills right at the moment. It's actually bad luck. But he worked too hard, but he got away with it. And he was under the delusion, in my opinion, that in Scam Dash, as I call it, you can make, or not Scam Dash, in all these apps, you can make, $300 or $400 a day. A lot of drivers do that. They work 80 hours a week for a short time, and they think you could do it with enough willpower. They don't see the bigger picture, that willpower's got as much of a minus or more as a plus. You just can't see the minus right away. So he's thinking, he doesn't want to be a dasher or a gig worker forever, but he's thinking it's possible, and he's giving out a motivational video and says you can make $50,000 in 5 months or whatever. People say, cool, he's got the tricks and all this stuff, and people like positivity. A lot of people don't know what positivity is. They all have a mistaken perception of it. I'm not just talking about this guy. This guy is smarter than most. The people who listen are like, yeah, I'm going to make that kind of money. They want to hear something like that. Of course, positivity. So I say, he said, if you think I'm wrong about it, he's open-minded. He said, if you think I'm wrong about anything, make a comment. I said, yeah, I think you're wrong about 2 things. He's thinking robot cars will be here soon. And I'm thinking, I used to think that, but then I realized there was a big snafu with the robot cars. I said, I think you're wrong about 2 things. 1, robot cars won't be here, probably won't be here that soon. And 2, the amount of money you're making is not realistic in the real world. I didn't put it like that, but it was something like that. I put it nicely, like, I don't know how you make so much money or whatever. I put it together later. It was what I just said a couple minutes ago. I looked at the months he was working. It was during the pandemic scare, and then he's overlapping the apps, and he's working really hard, and that makes you make twice and 3 times as much for a short time, and so on. That's why he made the most money. The other thing was, I don't believe the robots will be here too soon, and that's what this video is about. I gave him 2 reasons why there are problems with robot cars. They sound small, but they're not small. One is a giant glitch in a weird thing where he thought it was just imaginary. My informed guesstimate, after being a cab driver for 25 years and a DoorDash driver for 5 years and this and that and the other, and kind of a people studier, and I talk to people how they handle themselves in accidents and stuff, talk to other cab drivers, all kinds of stuff. And but I'm on the road as a cab driver 12 hours a day for, I think it was 25 years, on and off, most of 25 years. And I'm lucky to be alive, really. And pity of the gods and of the other people on the road is all I can say. I had some skill, but there's a lot of luck and pity involved in it. Lucky to have made it through a lot of stuff. But anyway, and then a DoorDash driver for several years, and I see how people react, and I see what goes on in near accidents. I've been near a lot of near accidents. And I told the guy, my guess is once or twice in a lifetime, a person comes in contact with a weird situation where they have to swerve out of someone's way or someone will get hurt, and they have to take the risk. Intuitively do it quickly, just because they're being compassionate to some extent. They don't want to run over some person. They have to take a risk of being at fault in another situation to get out of the person's way who screwed up, or the situation where something came rolling into the road or some weird thing. So they have to take a gamble. They see what's around them, and they see it's a slight gamble to go swerving out into the road really fast, but I see who has just been here, who's here, blah, blah, blah. Not as well as a robot, but I've seen the situation. It is a gamble because I don't know if these other cars are going to see me on time. Even a robot doesn't know what the other cars are thinking, the other drivers. And it is like a 1 in 20 risk that I'll cause a bigger accident and be at fault, and someone else could get killed or hurt instead of this guy or this girl or this family or whatever it is. But it's only 1 in 20, and I'll cut them a break. I have an intuition that I can get by. We have an intuition when we're lucky as humans. Robots don't have that intuition. We can read other people's faces. Robots can't read other people's faces. We send out warning beeps. I don't know if they've trained robots to do that yet, but I'm sure they will if they haven't yet. And the robots won't be as good at it because they can't read people's faces as well as other humans to see who deserves what kind of warning beep, or F off beep, or whatever, wake the hell up beep. But they'll train robots to do that to some extent. The point is, there are certain skills we have as humans that are intuitive, that are more adaptive right now, and probably will be for a long time, some of them, if not forever, than robot cars, on the one hand. But getting back to my point, this hobgoblin, whoever it is, could be me, because someone else might decide, if they're lucky and they feel that the people around them are smart and the vibe around them about the general non-rushiness of the day and how smart people are that day, the things that humans can pick up on better than robot programs for the time being, and probably for quite a while, well, figure how lucky they should be if they could swerve and they can see the odds are 1 in 20 or something like it, and it's worth it, and we'll take the chance. This is once and twice in a lifetime in a weird, scary, sudden situation. And every human reacts different. I'm talking on average. So as a cab driver or truck driver, it happens like once or twice a year. We're driving 10, 12 times as much as other people. I told the guy, great, this and that. For robots, if there's later 10 million robots on the road, but there's still human drivers out there, there's 300 million people. I don't know how many of them have cars, maybe 50 million. Let's say there's 10 million robot cars out there at some point, this hypothetically, if they flop the robot cars out there. Those robot cars will be driving 10, 12, 20 hours a day. They'll be driving more. They'll be driving like 5 times as much as humans or more. And they will drive as much in a few months as an average human drives like in 50 years in a lifetime of driving. And for them, it will not be once or twice in a lifetime or once or twice in a year. It'd be like once or twice a month. I average it out to once or twice every month or two, and I average it out to once a month. Of course, the math is wrong, but it gives you the general idea. Once a month, each robot car, not all of them, each one of them driving 5 to 10 times as much as the average human, will come across this situation, not once or twice in a lifetime, like once a month. That sounds pretty bad, but if there's 10 million robot cars, it's 10 million times a month. And the program has to be programmed by the owners of the company, telling the programmers what to do. when they have to make a choice between a 1 in 20 chance of being at fault and injuring or killing somebody or somebodies, or being not at fault and someone gets killed or somebody's get killed or injured, I'm guessing the program will be to do what puts the company at least liability, because I'm talking now, and of course my numbers are off, I'm talking about once a month times 10 million robot cars, 10 million times a month. If they take a chance, a 1 in 20 chance that I'm talking about that many humans will take, 10 million times a month, that means 5 million times a month. 10 million times a month, and they take a 1 in 20 chance, that means 500,000 times per month. They get into an at-fault accident, and maybe 1 out of 10 of them is a fatality. Maybe the robots can steer and react better. Maybe it's not that much. Maybe it's not. What math did I just come up with? I did this as I yip. 500,000 times a month instead of 10 million. That they take the gamble 10 million times a month if they're programmed to do that, like humans, I'm guessing do, or I'm seeing do, or whatever. Guessing, okay? Guesstimating. If robots are programmed to take that gamble 500,000 times a month, and which is 10 million times a month, and 500,000 times, 1 in 20, an accident happens, and out of that, maybe 50,000 are a fatality. Let's say 30,000, since my math is so horrible, not 50,000. I exaggerated a couple things in there. I even saw myself do it. 30,000 times a month, more realistic number and easier math. A fatality, that would be 1,000 fatalities per day. Now, let's say my math is way off because the robot cars can react better and warning beep better and see things more happening better. Let's say it's not 30,000 times a month. Did I just say 30,000 times a month? Yeah, and 1,000 times a day. Let's say it's not that. Let's say it's 100 times a day. Let's say they program them really well to react in these weird situations in multiple ways that humans can't react that fast. 100 times a day, an at-fault fatality. The robot companies will be sued for $1 or $2 million 100 times a day, $1 or $200 million a day, and there will be things on the news, blah, 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 so-and-so robot company had another 100 at-fault fatalities today. That is the daily average. Meanwhile, people will be unemployed because the robots will be taking over, I'll get to that in a minute, but a horrendous amount of jobs. They will be pissed off as hell, and they will be hearing this every day, 100 at-fault robot accidents. The robot companies don't want the publicity. They don't want to get sued for $100 million a day, etc. They don't want any of that stuff. They don't want to piss off the unemployed humans hearing that every day either, who are just ready to throw rocks at robot cars wherever they are. And a massive amount of newly unemployed people. I'll get to that, like I said, in a minute. So the robot car companies will probably take the option of not having at-fault accidents, but they don't get that 19 out of 20 odds to get out of those situations. What I have predicted as 500,000 times per month, and I cut to 1,000 times a day, and I narrowed the math down just while I yip to 100 times a day. No, that was after the 1 in 20. Yeah. 1,000 or 100 at-fault accidents a day, or if they decide not to take that 19 out of 20 odds, but not be at fault, they won't have 100 at-fault accidents a day anymore, but the amount of accidents will jump from 100 per day to 20 times that, 2,000 a day. I think the 100 was after fatalities. So if they don't take blame for 100 fatalities per day, then it's 2,000 fatalities per day that weren't happening before the robot cars were out there. I hear stats. I told the guy stats are often skewed and often wrong. In this case, all the accidents that are avoided by people taking a 1 in 20 19 out of 20 chance and 1 out of 20 of them failing, the other 19, which aren't 19 at all, I told you the massive numbers, more like 1,900 per day, if you're talking about 200 million people out there on the road. Just in this country, I'm talking, by the way. all those accidents that were avoided and no one ever got credit for taking a gamble and avoided the accident, they will all suddenly be there. The robot company will be programmed to do whatever. The first priority, whatever does not put the robot company at liability, as reasons that I just mentioned. I'm sorry I got really blurry with the math. I just remembered it, kind of made it up as I said it. I forgot, I got lost track when I was narrowing it down a little bit. I think it was 100 fatalities per day, and that would mean it would have been 2,000 fatalities per day if the robot didn't take that gamble. If the robot takes the gamble, the robot is at fault for 1 out of 20 of those 2,000, and they get sued for hundreds of $millions a day, and it's in the news and everything, and everyone's throwing rocks at the cars and pissed off and everything. If they don't take the gamble, the robot cars will say on the news the robot cars are totally innocent and great drivers, and there will be way more accidents in that situation than there were before, which were being avoided by humans. Sorry, COVID. Not really. I don't know if I have COVID. I've had this cough for forever. So that's the kind of weird problem that's not in the stats, even before the stats get skewed and people are bribed to skew the stats about robot cars being safer. And that is the kind of stuff that the robot companies, in my guesstimate, are sweeping under the carpet until they can find a way to fix it, or to manipulate the news entirely until they can take over each town completely with robot cars, which will take away a lot of that unpredictable stuff, but not all of it. There's always weird construction stuff and rocks rolling down mountains and funky weather and things going wrong, all kinds of weird, unpredictable stuff, even with the robot cars. But they can cut that down if it's all robot cars. There'll still be people on bikes and kids running out into the street and all kinds of weird stuff. Landslides, this, that, and the other. They can cut it down to a half. They still don't want to be sued 50 times a day instead of 100. Or let's say they cut it to a tenth. They don't want to be sued 10 times a day for 10 at-fault fatalities a day. I think their program is probably going to be take the first priority is the thing of least company liability, and the second priority will be greatest public safety. And I don't think they will, when you add that with all the unknowns together, that programming priority, which I don't blame them for taking, especially when they're trying to make money and all the stuff they're trying to do, I don't blame them from a business standpoint. I don't think they will lower the amount of accidents anywhere near as much as they say currently, or as stats are also bribed to be skewed in addition to saying how greatly they will increase safety. They may increase safety overall a little bit, but nothing like the stats that this kid read and was telling me. I don't think the stats are real at all. That's what I told this guy. I said there's many ways stats can be fake, and if you don't believe it, I mean, that's the next stat he told me is like he hears, by the way, 20% of all the jobs in America are car related. He said that the stat he read was that only 2% of those jobs will be lost when it gets all turned to robots. As in 1 out of 10, 20% of the jobs are in the car industry are people, and he says only 2% of the jobs, meaning 2% of the people jobs will be lost, as in 1 out of 10 people won't be there anymore when they change everything to robots. And I'm like, dude, I need not even say anything to that. You know how absurd that is. Obviously, the only profit in the robotizing the car business is to take away the people's jobs and keep the money that the people were making from their jobs. That's where the profit is. To depeopletize it. That's what automation is. That's the profit in automation, is to depeopletize it, and then you can give the money to the robot companies or whatever. But if we're talking about 20% of the jobs in the country being in the automotive industry, yeah, they'll take away many jobs as they can, and they'll put new ones back in creative ways to appease the public eye, this, that, and the other. But they'll still have to take away a lot if they want to make a profit. They will take away, with robots, most of them, and they will put some back, and they will replace the human jobs that used to be in cars with other kinds of jobs. But in the interest of profit, saying from their self-centered point of view, maybe, they will have to cut those jobs by a big chunk of money to make it, a big chunk of numbers to make a big chunk of money. In the end, I think it will be half of them. Not that will be lost, not 1 out of 10. I think 5 out of 10 will be lost, 50%. And that is, if 20% of the jobs in the country are in the automotive industry, and they take and then give back, and they end up taking they end up taking half of them, which is 10% of the jobs in the country. It was 20% in there. 10% of those jobs are lost. Maybe 15% are lost and they give 5 back somewhere else, this and that new creative job. But 10, in the end, 50% of the people in the automotive industry jobs are lost. In other words, 10% of all the jobs in the country, one half of 20% is 10% of all the jobs in the country are lost. This is the second point that I made to the guy, which is increasing the unemployment rate by 10%. That doesn't sound horrendous. Doesn't sound so horrible. 10% unemployment rate increase. I asked some college kids that were business experts, I said, how bad is it for 10% unemployment increase? They said it's horrendous. I already used the word. I don't know if they use that word, but it's something just like it. They said it's super bad. It's tricky math. It doesn't sound like much. 1 out of 10 people suddenly lose their jobs and don't have a job. But the math is weird. It's like raising the ocean level 10% or something weird that doesn't sound bad when you hear 10%, but it is bad. If you visualize it this way, this is obviously imaginary, but if you visualize it this way, I think the last I heard there was 300 million people in this country. I'm talking about just this country, by the way, for this Yip Yap video. If there's 300 million people in this country and 20% of them, just 10% of them lose their job. Well, let's say it this way. Let's say 300 million people in the country. Let's say 200 million of them are working. Some of them are too young, some of them are too old, some of them are rich, some of them are retired, some of them are just bums like me. Even though I scam dash, I'm kind of really a bum. Let's say 200 million of them are working. 10% is 20 million. Fine. 20 million people lose their jobs because of robotizing of the auto industry. And not all of a sudden, but slowly over a couple of years or whenever they can get away with it, if they could. Obviously, Trump and Biden and all the government know how horrendous that is. They have experts. They know how bad that is, so they don't want them to do it. The oil companies obviously don't want them to do it because they're more like electric cars. A lot of people don't want them to do it. But let's say they bribe who they have to bribe, change the stats, do this, that. They get Google or whoever owns all the news to manipulate the news so no one knows about all the accidents. And they sway things and they can get enough robot cars on the road that it's safer because there's less human drivers. And then they invent some new laws called the Good Robot Samaritan Law, and they do this, that, the other. And they just hush everyone who's rebelling against them, and the 20 million people who have lost a job, 10% of 200 million, they're all pissed off, but they have laws to intimidate them. And let's say they get away with it, and they manipulate a million things and hire a million experts to manipulate things, and they get away with putting 20 million people out of work so they can make some more money. All right, themselves. Let's say all that happens. Easier said than done. 20 million people jobless doesn't sound so bad. 10%, 20 million people jobless. But it is bad if you picture it like this. How many big cities are in this country? There's 51 states. There's a couple big cities in each state. Let's say there's 100 big cities in the country, give or take. Maybe there's 150. I don't know. Depends how big. 20 million people divided by, let's say there's 200 cities. It's easier math, and there's at least 200 if you allow some smaller, not so huge cities. 20 million people divided by 200 cities is 1 million, 100,000 homeless persons per city. In the outskirts, there's not so much. In the outskirts, people complain to their neighbor, I'm out jobless, can you help me out? And there'll be a lot of that, and it'll hurt things. It'll hurt the mood, it'll hurt the economy and everything. But people will survive through that kind of thing in small towns in the country. But let's say 200 cities, 20 million people, 100,000 people, homeless, new homeless people, or jobless, which eventually equates to this or that person becoming homeless in each city, unemployed. 100,000 unemployed people per city. Well, picture your city. How big is your city? Like, I'm in Kansas City. I think the metro area is 3 million. St. Louis across Missouri is also 3 million. Denver is 3 million. Other cities are bigger. Chicago's 10 or 12 million. LA's 15 million. New York's 10 million. But like, let's say 3 million for an average, and suddenly 100,000 people are jobless. And probably that many people are becoming homeless over time, or this or that, or apartments becoming cheaper. But either way, 1 out of 30 people are jobless, and maybe let's say 1 out of 50 people homeless. Doesn't sound that bad. But let's just picture it like this. You're in a city of 3 million people, and there's 100,000 people now jobless, and let's be nice and say 50,000 people homeless in the city, new homeless people in the city. Homeless shelters don't hold enough for 50,000 people. Yeah, they'll make new ones, they'll do this and that. But 50,000 people is the amount of people in a football stadium. And sorry to use a horrible example like that. Picture a packed football stadium or something like that with 50,000 people in it, in your city, that many new homeless people, twice that many jobless people, that many homeless people new in your city. And don't bother going to another city because this is all the cities. I don't know. Could you make it home? Could you make it out of, if they were all in the football stadium, you'd be lucky to make it out of there alive. You'd have your car like picked up and tossed upside down after a while. These people would be pissed off after a while. They'd be out in the cold, they'd be pissed, they'd be foodless, homeless, cigarette-less, alcohol-less, this, that, and the other thing. They couldn't handle it because there'd be too many of them. They'd have security guards at all the gas stations. They get out, get out, get out. But it would be bad, man. That many homeless people, new homeless people in your city, and every city, don't bother going to another city. Don't bother going out into the country because everyone will have been using up their money to take care of their friends. That 1 out of 20 friends that's homeless. 1 out of 10, sorry. Yeah, 1 out of 10 that's become jobless. Nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Could you make it home with 50,000 angry homeless people? They're not all at the football game you're going to. None of them are at the football game. But at every downtown, all of a sudden there's 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 homeless people pissed off. Sure, they'll be throwing rocks at all the robot cars after a while because it'll be like these robot bastards are getting us. And there'll be cameras on the robot cars and police enforcing these really bad punishments. But after a while, with so many people doing it, they can't put all those people in jail. They can't do anything. That's why I told this kid that could be a civil war against robots after a while. I call him a kid. He's a man. You know, he's grown up and everything. I just got him on old. I'm 51. I can pretend I'm the only. I can say kid. Hey, kid. I'm 50-year-old kids. So, yeah. 50,000 new homeless people and 100,000 jobless people all asking for money panhandling. That's what else would they do? If not robbing someone, panhandling. And throwing rocks at robot cars in their spare time. It wouldn't be no joke. That's the other bad thing. One is the robot cars have a hidden conundrum between liability and greater public safety. There's a vast difference between them, and that has not been recorded on stats or anything. It hasn't even been probably considered very much, as far as I know. That weird gamble I told you that so many people take, it hasn't been recorded because 19 out of 20 of them never get even notified to the police. And the people who do these stats, the city people, wherever people, I don't think they're creative enough to, I don't know, to try to guesstimate that number, but that's my guess on it. Once or twice in a lifetime, once or twice a year for a cab driver or truck driver, once or twice a month for a robot car. Yeah, and 10 or 20 million times a month for 10 million robot cars. It's a really tough call between company liability and greater public safety. They're not the same in that particular case, or in a lot of unpredictable cases. That's the one problem. The other problem is increasing the unemployment rate by 10%. It's a really catastrophic thing, and the people who control the government as far as politics are concerned, they don't want that to happen either. So those are two big snafus with the robot car business, and I rambled on forever, and I gotta get to Scam Dash work. What time is it? How long has it been? 28 minutes of me yip-yapping. Sad thing is no one will ever listen to this because my videos suck. Let me get to 29 minutes. It's the 29th. 5 seconds to go. Alrighty then.